Safeguarding Africa.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mandisa Mthembu, and welcome to the Safeguarding Africa podcast. I am so pleased to inform you that our drum circle, our family of champions who safeguard and protect children, is growing. And today we're going to hear from an impressive woman who runs an organization that is doing such important and critical work in the space of safeguarding and protecting children from abuse. She's going to tell us more about how her organization, Matla Bana, do this. And also, as usual, we're going to have some practical, very useful insights and things that you can do immediately after listening to this episode. So, without further ado, Monique Strydom, welcome. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me and, of course, Matla Bana.
Perfect. So, before anything else, please can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Matlawana.
Yes, I am actually an actress by profession and left the industry many years ago because we didn't make money. And I had a long journey to get to where we are today. I was kidnapped with a group of other hostages whilst on a holiday and held hostage for 4 months. And got a calling there, a godly calling, to tell me I will be released and I will come back to South Africa and I will help people in need. And for 2 years, I didn't know where I had to help. And then the horrific rape of baby Tsepang happened. And then I had a bit of a public profile because of my kidnapping. I was asked to chair or write a petition to the government about child rape. And then I said, well, I know nothing about child rape. So I got a task team together to look at what's happening in our country and why are babies being raped. And then out of that, I connected with the head of the child protection then, and he said to me, please, Monique, we're desperate. We need an organization who can work with children in those first few hours of reporting. And I said no to him for many months because I was very busy with other things and other charities. And then I got another supernatural calling, and eventually I said yes. And that's how Matla Bana was born 22 years ago. So we are there to minimize the secondary abuse children suffer when they
Yes, yes.
report
I
crimes.
actually love that. When I was doing some research on you, I saw that on the website and I just said, I love this languaging that of minimizing secondary abuse when a child has already suffered a crime against them. And we're going to talk a little bit about why is there a need to minimize secondary abuse. If I've been abused already, why would somebody think it's okay to then subject me to more abuse? So we'll talk a bit more about that. But before we got into that, I wanted to just acknowledge that most of us who go into the work of supporting others, of caring for others, of activism, of championing the well-being of others, have usually ourselves gone through some kind of trauma or an experience that made us realize that, hey, um, this I this experience doesn't disempower me. In fact, it actually it empowers me to then do more for others who might not be in a privileged position to be able to do to get themselves out of it or to even do more for others. So I really just love that about your story. That's out of an unfortunate and a traumatic experience, you were able to respond to the fact that there's other people and children at that who have just dire circumstances, and you wanted to do your part. One day I'll tell you my story, but today is about you and your organization. So just really wanted to highlight that. I really appreciate that about human beings. Um, the name
Yeah.
Matlaban, what does it mean?
We chose something that's positive, and we said we want to empower our children. So it means power to the children.
Yes.
We really didn't want something with tears or unhappy children, and often because kids are often in an environment where the perpetrators are known to them. So often there's no choice. They can't speak out. So
Mm,
we said if we can empower our children, if we can be a voice so that they can understand that there is help somewhere, and that we take back, because if we go through trauma, our power is taken away from us. Is to try and give back that power so that people can stand up and report and be helped.
yeah, I love that name. It's the first thing that drew me to your organization when I saw it. I said, ah, what a wonderful name, power to the children, right? I think
Mm.
it's Sesotho.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a super.
it's Sesotho, so that's a language in South Africa, and it means power to the children. I really love that. And so let's talk about how you are giving power to the voice of the child through your work. So a child has been abused or a crime or has suffered a crime against them. Are you specific about the crimes um that you're focusing on, or is it any kind of crime that has been done against a child that you
Yeah, I think because of the nature of where we work, so when we started Matla Bana, we started working specifically to support the child protection units. In those days, they were called the child protection units. So their mandate was to investigate mainly child rape and child abuse, but it was mainly child rape. Since then, their mandate has changed. I don't know if you remember, there was a stage where they were completely decentralized into police stations. And then they were brought back as a specialist unit. And then they got extra mandates. So they got child protection, they got sexual offenses, and they are also doing with the SECI, the online crime investigations. So our focus is purely because we support them very much. A lot of our focus is specifically in the field of sexual abuse, because that is basically their main focus. And also because their mandate broadened. I mean, they're investigating all rape now. So it's rape against women, children, genders. It's actually broadened our mandate in that sense as well.
mm,
Although we
mm.
say we're a child protection organization, if we treat or train police officers, obviously other people are going to benefit by that as well.
Exactly, exactly. Because really, protection is for all human beings have a right to being safe, right? So
That's
absolutely.
right.
And I hope, and I'm sure that in your training, you're able to also help the the policemen and women to understand that what you're training them, it's transferable to any sexual abuse
Yeah.
case, not just when it
Yeah.
relates to a child. Fantastic. Really
That's right. And
fantastic.
also, a lot of them have actually left, a lot of our students have left the FCS unit and have moved on to other units just because of them being promoted. But, we know that they can take that skill everywhere because we work in trauma, we do that. So we train in essential skills. So actually,
Yes.
they're taking that training with, and they're also equipping themselves, because what we see is that they are often so traumatized that they burn out, they have health problems, they go on early retirement. So we're actually losing a valuable skill, which is really, really sad because it's very complicated investigating, for instance, child rape cases.
Yeah, and in itself, it is traumatic for those
That's
who are
right.
investigating it. Absolutely. So Monique, the people who are listening who have never heard about you before, where do you operate from? Which provinces are you in? Just so we can get an understanding of where Matlabana is to be found.
We are everywhere.
Yes.
No, actually, we are. I think we're the only NGO with whom the police, the National Office, have signed a memorandum of understanding. And we've actually signed our third one last year. So it's been 12 years that we've been working in partnership with them. And because of the nature of our projects, we can roll out in any province. So we've actually worked in all the provinces. Unfortunately, it's very much funding based. So the provinces, I mean, we don't have enough funds to do all the projects we need to do. Um, so currently, there are provinces who are not getting enough funding. I'm talking specifically the Eastern Cape, I'm talking KZN. So we really struggle, and these are the provinces with high incidence of rape.
Yeah.
We're really struggling to get there, but we are getting there. So we have implemented all of our, or most of our projects in all the provinces.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you are national, but of
National.
course there are some limitations, as we all know in the
Mhm.
work of NPOs. We rely on funding and sponsorship, and so that can be a limitation. Fantastic. Hopefully, somebody who's listening might be moved to go on your website, click on the donate button, and contribute something. All right, so let's talk a little bit now about what you do. Like, let's get into the details of it. So you've spoken about child protection units in the SAPS, or the South African Police Services. You've spoken about training. You've spoken about sexual violence being the main focus,
Mm.
but of course, mandates have changed because life has evolved and our challenges have changed. So, can you describe what work you're doing with the police? So, like, what is a policeman or woman who's sitting in front of Monique or a facilitator from Matla Bana receiving? What is he hearing? What training is he being given when it comes
Yeah.
to?
So
No, go ahead.
we have actually sorry, we have quite a few projects. So I think one of our most important projects is our child-friendly facilities. You know, what happened was that we realized children are being taken into an environment where they're already so traumatized, and then they have to walk into an office where a bunch of police officers are sitting. And for children, the children fear police because we threaten children with the police. So all of that is already traumatizing. So we said, let's start creating child-friendly environments at these units, which is an environment where the child feels safe. And through the years, you know, with the decentralization, we had about 9 of those facilities, and with the decentralization of the units, we lost all of that. So we had to start all over again. But through the years, we've actually developed a blueprint for these facilities, where the colors we use on the walls, um, if possible, and if there's accommodation, we take 2 rooms. We have an assessment room. We have a monitoring room that's linked to that assessment room. We put audiovisual recording facilities in. So the detective or the social worker can actually record the whole interview with a child, which they can then later refer back to. The murals that we put on the walls were designed by a forensic social worker. So they actually do the assessment with those.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's where we have our biggest impact currently. We have over just 40 of these facilities across South Africa. So they either we have a few at hospitals, we have a few at courts, but mainly they are at the FCS units. For us, obviously, the challenge with that is funding and accommodation, because often these units don't have enough offices even for themselves. You know, you'll find 4 of them sitting in one office, and there is absolutely no space even to do a room like that. We've just opened a container facility at Kraaifontein Police Station, who has one of the highest rape reporting stats in the country, where they have barely, you know, they have 3 officers, I think, for 12 detectives. So I think that's the project where we have a long-term, very big impact. And we do have facilities in like Motherwell in the Eastern Cape. We have one in Uppington. We have one in De Aar. We have one in Modimolle. So we really try our best to be in places where there is a huge need. Unfortunately, like KwaZulu-Natal, no funding, and that's where we need to be with that. So that's the one project. Our other project is the Comfort Pack project. And this is the project where we pack comfort packs for the children.
Okay.
And we hand these packs over to the FCS units. And it contains, um, basic items. But for that child in that moment of trauma, it has a huge impact. It's something to eat, to drink, a teddy bear to hold, clean underwear, sanitary towel. Um, for us, it looks like it's nothing. And the whole idea was to help them in those first few hours. But we've discovered now is that it actually immediately, the moment the police gives that pack to the child, there's a relationship built. So there's already a trust relationship. So we're actually seeing quicker disclosures. In cases where kids haven't disclosed, there's just injury. Then we also do the training project. We've trained over 6,000 police officers since we've started. And a lot of our training we look at trauma management, we look at stress management, we look at conflict management, we look at emotional intelligence. We focus on perceptions because we often find that perceptions influence how a person responds. What happened
Yes.
in their own lives can influence. Men don't always understand women. And then we also do role play with them. And then we also do victim expectation and client service. So we go into pure client service and victim expectation so that they understand what their clients are going through. Sorry. And then we also have a school program where we do a school education program where we basically do educate children. And for the last 3 years, we've run a bully program or an anti-bully program. And the reason why we've done that is we've received so many complaints of the increase in bullying, and we believe it's because of the trauma of the pandemic and the lockdown. So we this year we've already been to the Eastern Cape, we've been to the Northwest Province, we've been here in Cape Town, and we're going up to Mpumalanga and Limpopo later in the year. And included in that program is we also do child safety. So we teach children about perpetrators and what they
Yes.
do and what you must do as a child. And it's very simple, it's very basic. We give them a survivor guide, which is a therapy guide that we've developed as part of this program, because we realize there's so many children that we reach who do not have access to trauma counseling, who do not have access to help. And I think this is where that giving power to our children comes in,
Mm-hmm.
is that we can empower them in a very simple but effective way.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that's everything we do.
Quite.
A big nutshell.
Yeah, quite the nutshell. But I love it, Monique. I think it's such crucial work. I mean, and in every area of work that you've described, I can hear the voice of the child coming out, right? Child friendly spaces. When a child arrives at the police station, take them into a room that is child friendly. Can you imagine a child that walks in scared, traumatized, and they walk into this beautiful room with this mural and these cute couches, just this colorful place, not a dark and dingy room where I must still talk about this dark and scary thing that's happened to me. So I really like, I can hear, I can see how you're empowering the child's voice through that. And then I also love the idea of the comfort pack, because again, you know, any child unfortunately can be at risk of experiencing
Mm.
abuse, but often the children that we see experiencing abuse are the vulnerable, are the ones who
Yeah.
are from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so just that
Mm.
walking in, they've been brave enough to agree to come here, and then they get this little this little gift that says, this is for you, this is
Mm.
yours. There's a teddy bear in there, and there's all other
Yeah.
basic things that are going to bring you dignity, even in this moment. You know,
Yeah,
I
and maybe
can.
I can share one of the what really touched my heart is because
Mm,
we most of the time don't meet the children because the police can't disclose their
yes.
identities. But one day we packed with a church. A church packed these packs, and they wrote letters, and we make it part of our packing as well. That people write a personal letter, and we this 12-year-old wrote a letter back, and she gave it to the detective, and he sent it to us, and she wrote to us, and she said, "Thank you for my teddy bear. I thought I had no friends, but now I have my teddy." And then she wrote, "And thank you for telling that Jesus loves me," because obviously they wrote in the letter, "Jesus loves you." She said, "I thought nobody loved me." And I think that, and what we say is, we are changing lives. That child's life has been changed forever. We are changing lives, and I think if we cannot help thousands of children, but if we can help that one child, we've changed a lifetime.
Absolutely. Oh, that. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, and you don't realize what impact that's that seemingly small gesture will have, right? But here the child was feeling alone, didn't know, probably had not heard the words "I love you" in a very long time.
Yes, and she
Um,
was raped by her father, actually.
oh, awful,
Mm.
awful. So can you imagine having heard the words "I love you" in a long time, not from the people that are meant to love me, and then um, feels alone, right? Doesn't feel connected to anybody. And in that little package that you've created, you've done those two things. You've created connection, and you've made them feel, or affection from another human
Yeah.
being. Just incredible. Thank you to you and all the people that you work with who put these packs together, who write those notes. I love the idea of a handwritten notes. Um, and maybe I can ask you this while we're on the subject, because I'm now thinking about it. How do we get involved? So if I'm at home, even at myself as Mandy said, if I wanna get involved, help pack things, how do I get involved? Where do I go?
Yeah, currently, I just need to say that we don't use a lot of volunteers purely because we work at the police stations. And as I said, we cannot disclose identities of
Yes.
children. So we have very limited um, opportunities for volunteering. We do pack packs when we have money. So it's very much based on when we get money for the packing. But we normally pack in Gauteng, and we pack in the Western Cape, and then we distribute from here. So if we have a packing session, the best is to be in contact with us, and we can let you know when we pack again. Unfortunately, with a lot of our packing sessions, a lot of them would be corporate. So people will bring their companies and say, "We want our company to pack." So sometimes there is not an opportunity for
Mm,
volunteers. But what we also ask volunteers, is to see if you can get a group of friends together and say, let's each one pack a pack once a month. And then after 3 months, we donate a bunch of packs, and then we let the closest FCS unit know and say to them, will you collect those packs? And those packs will go back into the area where you then live or work. And just as a bit of background, we currently do for two ages. We do for 9 to 12, and we do 5 to 8 years old. And in the old days, we've seen it was the 9 to 12s, but now we're seeing that the kids are getting younger and younger. So the demand for the younger packs are actually increasing. We sometimes do boy packs because we're also seeing that the boy reporting is increasing. But because the demand is so high and our funding is not, we can't meet the demand. So we mainly focus on the little girl packs. But there is a full list. If people go to our website, there's a section that says how you can help. And if they just scroll down, there's a link that they can click on, and you can download the whole um, list of what needs to go in a pack and how to pack it as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that information. So I can be at home, and once a month I can pack something, and after a few months I can donate those, or we can gather as a group of friends and do that. But there's a way that we can all be involved in the
Yes,
work
and
that
those
you're
who can
doing.
knit, yeah, I am. I mean, I'm not a handy person, so I can't knit. But we do have a lot of pensioner ladies who knit for us. So
Mm,
and then they would every 6 months they will give us a whole bag full of teddy bears, and that helps a great deal because teddy bears are extremely expensive, and
yeah,
they are so beautiful when
absolutely.
they're handmade. So
Yes.
that's another way people can support.
Brilliant. Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you. I also love just hearing about the training that you're doing with the men and women who work at the SAPS, the EQ, the perception, um, just helping them really understand the victim or the client who's going to be in front of them, and how to and what that person is expecting, what they're going through, and then what they are expecting to receive when they walk in there, right? I think again there you're really helping to raise the volume on the child's voice and experience. um, 6,000, that's a big number. I know we have way more policemen and women across the country than that number, but that is still a significant number, Monique, and we can clearly even hear that that is having an impact because there are children who are at the receiving end of these trained officials. So that's
Yeah, and it's actually very interesting. You know, when we started with the training, um, we actually did some of the courses. We did the emotional intelligence, for instance, first. So we had
mm,
it's in 3 modules. We did in 3 modules over 6 to 8 months with the groups. And then we realized our police officers were so traumatized. And I must just add that we've also trained sexual offences prosecutors in this training as well. We've taken groups of them through this as well. We actually realized they were so traumatized themselves that it didn't help to give them emotional intelligence and conflict management
mm,
before we actually start working with trauma management and negative resilience. So we actually had to
mm,
switch and change our programs around so that we could actually equip them, first of all, to deal with their own trauma. Because if you're sitting with a victim across in your office and you charged up, I mean, that victim is going to feel that. So your chances of getting a disclosure or getting a good statement is you minimizing that. So we actually switched all our training courses around. And the other thing that makes our training courses really unique is that my one trainer, for instance, comes from the security industry. He's a PTSD sufferer and he studied psychology. So the moment he walks in, he understands because he has the security background, he understands exactly what the police are going through. He talks out of his own experience. I do the trauma training, and it's all based on my experience as a hostage. So it's also a personal experience.
mm,
My other trainer was herself raped for 2 or 3 years by her stepfather as a child. So she talks out of practical experience. Um, and I think that's what makes our course so unique in the world. I don't think there is purely just because of the trainers and our own experiences and the fact that we can talk because we've experienced it. We don't just talk theory.
mm.
We talk
Yes, yes,
practicality. We give tools that people can use that's practical and that they can implement immediately. So
yeah.
we do have great successes with our training. We measure the stress levels. We see how it comes down. We see how our detectives have progressed in the months that they were with us, and it's just heartwarming because sometimes they also despondent and they exhausted and they overwhelmed. And if you can equip them, so we're actually giving power to them as well.
Yes, yes,
And then they
yes.
carry that power through into their jobs, into the relationships they have with their clients.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to say that I think whenever you're doing work of empowering, you are never empowering just one part of the equation. You're empowering the other, um, whether it's automatically or it's as a byproduct of empowering the one, the other
Yeah,
also gets empowered, right? And when you're talking about
yeah.
the training of the officers in EQ, in perspective, in perception, rather, I was even thinking about if I put a parent in the position of that person, of that official.
Mm.
Parents also need to know that when a child is disclosing to you, don't get charged up and now, you are
Yes.
getting caught up in your own emotions when this
Mm.
child is sitting in front of you and has bravely, took so much courage to come and tell you what's going on, right? Regulate
Mm.
yourself so that you can get as much
Yes.
information from them about what has happened so you know how to move next, you know, what is the next action to take. So yeah, when we were talking, I just thought actually what you're doing is you're also empowering these people, these individuals, on how to do they
Mm.
work effectively. But even when they're not in the office, as you're saying, when they've moved to other departments, and I'm sure when they're in their communities, they are still
Mm.
spreading that message because they are feeling empowered too now. They know something they didn't know before, and they are now sharing it with others. So yeah, that.
Yes, and you know what? You touched on a very valid point there with regards to the parents, because we talk of a failure of the system, and it's not just a police system or the legal justice system. Um, Often where we see the system fails is within the own home. When a child goes to a mother and the child says to the mother, "Daddy raped me," or "Daddy did this to me," and the mother will go, "Oh, that's not possible." Yes, that's,
Mm,
and by just saying that in that moment, you're already making the child a liar, and there already the system failed. Or the mother is so overwhelmed, or maybe the dad is the breadwinner, so the failure already starts at home, where we don't protect our children, we don't listen to our children, we don't know what's going on in the lives of our children, especially with technology nowadays, where kids play in online games, and people are chatting to them, and we as parents have no clue of what's going on. So there's such a we are also failing. It's we part of that system that
yes.
is failing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And because we're part of the system that's failing, we can be part of the system that's also coming up with solutions and improving things,
Yes.
right? And that's what we do at
Yes.
Safeguarding Africa. We actually zoom in on the adults and say, what is your role? Our mantra is
Mm.
be who you need it. So if you have a young person in the house, you have a young person in your classroom, you're a teacher, you have a young person in your community, how are you showing up for that young person in a way that will prevent any harm from happening to them? But if it does happen, that they can come to you and trust that you will be a safe adult for them and help them get the help they need. We're all part of the system. We can't point fingers. Um,
Yeah.
Anymore. We have
Mm.
to just get on with the work of asking ourselves, what am I doing and how can I step up? You know.
Yeah, and if we always say, people will afterwards say, "Yes, we thought there was something wrong with that uncle." And then people will start talking instead of people talking, and you have to report sexual abuse of children. It's what the
Yes.
law says.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and that's where we fail. People don't talk, and people don't want to go there, and people are scared. And who are the victims in the end? It's our children. We as adults are not taking care of our children.
Yeah. But if we raise that I like that piece you said about victim slash client expectation. If we ask an adult, if you were this child and you are living in a house, in a community, in a society, in a school, where there was an uncle or a person who was acting suspiciously, what would you expect the adults in your life to do? Keep quiet,
Mm.
be unsure about what to do, and therefore keep quiet for a long time, or to
Yeah,
raise something appropriately, as simple as saying, I'm not sure, of anything, but this person, I just feel like I'm not comfortable with leaving children around them, or
yeah.
alone with them. That's it. That's all you need to do, you know
Yeah,
Just
yeah. Also, what we've a case we're assisting with now is the 16-year-old cousin who raped his cousins, both two 12-year-old little daughter kids, and now the families don't want to make trouble for the 16-year-old. But what we're saying is there needs to be intervention because he's already a serial rapist. And there is a juvenile program. He's still young enough to go into that program. If he gets older and he rapes again, he's going to go to prison. So there's also, with regards to him, a responsibility that he needs assistance and help, together with the two young girls. But the families were very worried because they didn't want to cause family conflict or um, try to solve it on their own.
mm,
But you know what? Those two little girls are going to go through life and say, "My family failed me
yeah,
because by helping him and supporting him and his family, my family left me out.
yeah.
I wasn't protected. They will never feel safe in their lives again because the people closest to them are not taking care of them and keeping them safe."
Absolutely. You shielded my abuser instead of shielding me. How tragic.
Mm,
Monique, you
mm,
just touched on another piece, another element of abuse that we see a lot of now. The peer-to-peer stuff. We always when we grow up, we're told, like a stranger, an adult, an uncle, the boogeyman comes along and harasses you. Nobody says to you, as people your own age, people who are also considered children as you in a house, in a home environment, sorry, in a school environment, can also be
mm,
abusive, and they can be
mm.
sexual abusers. They can be bullies, as you said about your program in the school, um, and they can be emotional abusers as well. So I
Yes.
loved hearing that you're doing school programs as well, where you are raising this awareness on child safety, because we need to protect children from themselves or from each other. Sometimes, unfortunately, we're also seeing
Yeah.
a rise in that, and it's really tragic. And I think a lot of families are afraid. So maybe you can just tell us more about that juvenile program. When I realized that my child has sexually abused another child, I'm afraid that he or she or them are going to, like, their life is over now. If we report them, they're gonna be labeled a criminal, and then it's over for them. Is it really over for them? What
It's
help is
over for them if
available
you
out
don't
there?
report. Then it's over for them. And if they don't get help, I mean, it's if a 16-year-old rapes two little 12-year-old girls, there is something very wrong there. So yes, we actually work with another charity who specifically works in that field, where they have the juvenile program, and it's a restoration program where they actually work with them, um, to look at their behavior and um, how they responded and what they did. So intervention, as I said earlier on, if there's no intervention, he's already raped twice. He is going to rape. He is going to end up in jail. That's unfortunately what's going to happen. And we live in an environment where kids are so exposed. If you look at what they see on television, what they can watch on their phones, pornography is a huge, huge problem, and it's all over. I think our school education system has got a finger in the pie here as well, with what kids are being taught in school in their sex education program. So our kids, I'm 60 years old. In my days, we were we were very protected. We were not exposed. Our parents didn't have the sex talk was with us, for instance. What kids now see at very young ages, and people need to understand that a 16-year-old is run and managed by his hormones. It's a fact. We need to understand that his prefrontal cortex is not switched on, So they can't do risk management, that they do need adult guidance and that they do need help. And if they are exposed to the things that kids are exposed to now, they of course they're going to try things out and experiment. Um, and I know, that we don't want to make people scared now if you have your little 6-year-old playing with his cousin and they're touching, because we know that was also part of growing up,
Development.
that experimenting. But when you get to rape of children, um, then we're really going into a dangerous area. And what we've actually also seen is that in some of the areas we work in, that the age of the perpetrators are coming down. So it's younger and younger people who are actually being the perpetrators. So often you see that cycle of abuse repeating itself.
Mm.
The other problem also, which we have in the poorer communities, is people live in one house, in one room together. So the kids are actually not only exposed to that and what's happening in their homes, but there's also not safe environments for them.
Yeah.
So you have the neighbor who comes over, or the mother who needs to go somewhere and she leaves the child with someone. So you see a lot of that as well. So if you look at the whole system, our kids are actually set up to fail. So we as adults need to be much more vigilant. We need to intervene sooner than later. And I always say to people, rather be sorry, rather go back and say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong, than have your child being raped.
Absolutely.
Because with I got it wrong, you can say I'm sorry, but if your child was raped,
And you
that
said
that
nothing.
life has been
Yeah.
changed forever. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. I really like what you said, Monique, about so the age gap is going is the age of offense, if I can say, is getting lower and lower, number one. And so we need to be vigilant about these things. But I also like what you said about the fact that when a parent is afraid to act when they become aware that their child is sexually or even physically abusing other children, that's actually doing more damage to that child than actually reporting it. Because when you report it, you put you and your child up. You open up the opportunities for getting support, right? They're going to drill down to
Mm,
understanding, why is the child acting in this way? Why are they
mm,
behaving in this way? What help do they need? Because something's wrong when a child is looking at other children and enacting sexual activity with them or
mm,
physically harming them. So why is my child acting in this way? Let's help my child. Let's figure it out. Yes, there'll be consequences. There'll be some punishments, of course, because we that is the nature of life, but there'll also be
mm.
help. There'll also be restorative help. And
Yeah.
so if you
And I think, what we need to understand is that the system do fail.
yeah.
The reporting system is not an easy system. Sometimes, kids, sometimes when they disclose, they have to disclose to 4 or 5 people, which is not ideal. To go through the court system, the kid has to go and testify. We have many cases where kids just get to that point that they can't testify. So they need to be
Mm,
able to testify. A lot of the courts do have child-friendly environments. So that whole system, that whole process a child has to go through is, and a family for that matter, is not easy. But it goes back to the thing where you say, at least my child will know that we did try to help. It's not that a child um, will live knowing that my parents or my mother or these people did absolutely nothing to help me. So already, although it's not an easy road, already um, there's something in place that gives that child security, that says to that child, there are people who will stand up for me.
yes, yes. And that's really the message we want children to know, Monique, wherever they are, that there is somebody who will stand up for me. when I've been hurt,
Mm.
when I report that I have been hurt, there is somebody who will stand up for me.
Yeah, and I can
R-
maybe share. I think one of the
Mm,
cases that really got to me was we were working with an online therapy service for a while, and unfortunately they had to close because they just didn't have funding. And they started chatting to a little girl who was 12 years old, I think in Sebokeng, and she had a baby of a year old already. And then it transpired that her dad was the rapist. Her mother had passed away. She was living with the dad and the father. And he started raping her at 10. And I think she had the baby just after she was 11. And now she's 12 years old. The school sent her away because she was getting too big. They could see she was pregnant. They did nothing. The hospital where she had gave birth did not report this. So by the time she started talking to the therapy line, she was ready to commit suicide, 12 years old, with a baby that she had to take care for. I mean, she's a child herself.
herself.
So you can absolutely see how the system failed this child, and the perpetrator is the father.
Yeah. From the home system all the way to the health system,
Mm.
all the way to you know, aspects of the legal system just failed this young child. And
Mm.
we're not telling these stories to scare people,
Yeah.
but it's really to raise awareness, right? That if you are a teacher and you see a child and they're pregnant, right? Or you're a school principal, you're a teacher, it's not enough to just say, well, our school doesn't cater for pregnant individuals, so we have to go back home. We have to understand, how did this young person find themselves here? So even
Mm.
teachers, senior leaders in education need to be trained as well, or empowered on how to
Mm.
respond to young people who manifest the signs of abuse, right? Because teenage pregnancy is a huge indicator of abuse.
Yes,
This
it
child could be,
is.
it's a
And
huge indicator of abuse. Go ahead, Monique.
yeah, yeah, no, I wanted to comment on that because if you look at the kids under 12 years old who were pregnant, how many of those kids? And we actually took it up with the police, and the police said they are having great difficulty because what they often find, I spoke to the Western Cape police, is these kids are immediately taken away to somewhere in the Eastern Cape, and the families they disappear into the system there, and the people don't make cases, so they can't actually investigate. So we once again see a situation where the child is not being protected. She's been taken away. The police can never find out who was the rapist, what happened to the child. So in a lot of cases, that's actually happening now.
Yeah, if you're a neighbor and you see a young person, a young girl who's pregnant, don't look away and just think, oh, or shame her, right? Oh, she's been naughty.
Mm.
That's what happens. Something's wrong. you know what
Yeah.
is happening. Reach out to their child, ask them how you can help them, and try and connect them to the services that they need.
Mm.
Monique, I want to talk a little bit about services, because I know we could do this all day, but we do have to let you go. um, let's say I'm a parent right now and I need to go and report something. All right. I'm in KZN. Let's start there. Right? So let's use a place where Matla isn't isn't very very visible, right? And I'm using that for a reason, right? If I so I'm in KZN. I want to go and help my child report something. What are my rights? Like, how do I feel confident that when I walk into that police station, we're gonna get help? What are my rights? What are my child's rights? What are the things that I should ask for, and make sure are done um, that day when I report, but also maybe a few days after I report.
Yeah, so there is a whole list of children's rights and it's World Health Rights. And the one is I need to be loved and protected from harm. So, with regards to sexual abuse, and people can't report at our charity. The best is to report sexual abuse at the closest police station. And unfortunately, I have to go to the client service center. In the old days, you could just go to the child protection unit. But they operate in districts now, so they have quite a few police stations that they serve. You have to go to the police station and you have to open the case there. And then that will be referred to the FCS unit, who will then do the investigation, who will then be in touch. That's the one place of reporting. They have to take your report. We know of a lot of cases where women go out partying, they get raped, and they arrive there, the police will say to them, go away, you're drunk. It is your right to report a case. They cannot send you away. If they send you away, you can report them. SAPS has got an app that you can download, and you can report that police station on that app. I think the police also has a website where you can actually report their services as well. So you can go and rate their services. So the police are there to protect. So if you go and report sexual abuse and they send you away, you stand there, you say, I want to see whoever's in command. I want to see the station commander. I want to see the commander of the shift at that, who is on shift there. That's my right. I want to report this abuse. There is also the Tutuzela centers. They are not all across the country. But they are at a lot of the main hospitals. I know, for instance, here we have one, I'm in Cape Town. There's one at Somerset Hospital. There's one at Karl Bremer. There's one at Paarl. They've just opened one in Stellenbosch. And those are one-stop centers. We actually have people who can do the medical examination. They have trauma counselors. They are in touch with the police's FCS units. Often you will find that the police, the FCS units, if there are injuries, they will take them directly to the Tutuzela to do that medical examination. And they do a J88 form, which is the medical evidence form. So that's sexual abuse. So no police station can turn you away. With regards to reporting at schools, the Department of Education has a protocol, and each school should have a child protection protocol. And we spoke about this extensively many years ago, and it's much better now, because often you see that people are the perpetrators on the schools. They are teachers, or they are fellow students. What protocol does your school have? And it's in all fields of child protection. When we go in a school camp, when we get into a bus, how do I protect my children at my front gates? What and there's two different aspects that they need to look at it. How do I protect my children, my school children, from my own staff? Do I have something in place? How do I protect them from outside? What if a child discloses to me? What if a child goes to a teacher and discloses? Do you have a protocol in place for that? How do you report that thing? So,
Yes.
and it's very important because schools are often the places where kids report.
Yes.
And we know of schools where they just covered it up because they were so worried about the name. We know, I mean, there's a whole thing on Carte Blanche now about these affluent schools with the
Yes.
sports
Yes.
teams. We worked on a case where there was a music teacher involved, and it was just covered up because the schools are worried about their reputation. So it would be fantastic if you have a warrior in each school who will say, I am going to fight to make sure these things are in place, people can make sure. But I must say, nowadays, some schools do have social workers, they have psychologists at the school, so
Yes.
that's already a very positive. So a lot have changed in that regard. Then you can also, things like child neglect. And physical abuse, you can report to the Department of Social Development. They have NGOs working in all areas, or they partner with NGOs. Once again, I just need to say the system is understaffed, it's under-resourced, it's a
Yeah.
very slow process. Um, we feel a lot of the frustration of the public, because cases get postponed or things happen, and they feel that their people are not coming back to them. But just in defense of, for instance, the detectives, some of those detectives have 80 cases at hand on which they have to work. So
Mm.
they are understaffed, they are under-resourced. Once again, it's not an easy process, but we need to get the process going, so that we can stop this. And the statistics we're working with, I always say we really don't know what we're working with because there's such an underreporting. But
Yeah.
I always go when I speak at places and companies, in the old days, nobody would put up their hands. Now I'll say, how many of you know somebody who's been sexually abused or have been sexually abused yourselves?
Yes.
And more you see that people are putting up their hands. And I can guarantee if you sit in a room with 10 people, half of those people are going to put up their hands. So it is such a big part of our reality.
Yeah. Absolutely. Unfortunately, but that's true. Monique, thank you for walking us through all of those different spaces and ways of and ways of reporting and what you can expect. And I like that the system is overburdened. We cannot run away from that. So I like like the referring to NGOs that work in the space so that you don't feel alone completely if you're a parent or a young person who needs to report, right? There will be a Tutuzela, there will be a Matlabana, there will be a Safeguarding Africa. There'll be an organization somewhere in your community. Reach out to them and say, I need to go to the police and to report this, and I need help. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling unsure.
Mm,
And then I also like the idea the school piece, right? Schools have to actually report and respond to these matters. They don't get to just shoo them away and say it's not our responsibility. So we want our teachers, we know that it's not part of their work, it's not part of the teaching job they have, but we go into these industries and to these careers because we care about people. We want to provide a service that um, improves the lives of others. And if you are
mm,
teaching me maths and something else is wrong in my life, um, you get to respond and help me report it so that I can continue learning the maths. You know.
mm,
So yeah. So thank you for just highlighting all of those points of support for us. I had one question about social workers. How
mm.
what can I expect from social workers in my community when I've gone through abuse as a child, or I'm a parent of a child who's gone through abuse?
Well, it depends in which capacity they are employed. If I just look at the social workers we're working with the forensic social workers who work with the police, and they're purely there to assist with a court case. So they will do assessment of a child. They don't do any therapy. They will just do assessment of the child, and that assessment will go in with the court case. There are other social workers who will work for an organization where children needs to be removed. There are other social workers who do services like play therapy and counseling. The fact is, we need many more social workers. I think what we need even more is we need trauma counselors. I think that is, we did a campaign many years ago and we got in big trouble about that, where we said only rich kids can afford to be raped because they can afford to pay for therapy.
Mm,
Most of the children who are being raped cannot afford to pay for therapy. And you know, the perpetrator might be arrested and he might go to jail, but he's going to sit in jail and have food and have education and have a system that works for him. And this child has to go on with her life. And
Yeah.
often when you see the cases go on for so long, the perpetrator might live next to the child, so that it's extreme trauma.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really where we need support structures within communities. And that is
Mm.
things that mothers can do or women groups can do, and lay counselors can do. And I always use this example of 9/11 because I think that's where we are in this country with regards to rape. You know, when 9/11 happened in New York, they were really so worried about um, all the people are going to be so traumatized that there are not going to be enough people to do therapy.
Mm.
But what they discovered was that not a lot of people went for therapy, but people healed because because they went through the same experience, they got together and they started supporting each other because they understood what the other person was going through. So
Yeah.
if we have structures within our communities that are just support structures, and I'm now specifically thinking of churches, you know, and women's groups. And I had a conversation with somebody this other day. You know, our churches are all moving inside; they're not moving outside. You know, they're focusing inside. If we can start focusing outside, and say we're putting, and it's a complex matter if you start working with abuse victims, but just to have a support structure in place where people feel I can go to, I'm space. Somebody's holding space for me. Somebody is
Yes.
listening to me. It's a place where I can feel safe and where I can get support. Sometimes, and this is not only for people who've gone through this now, but some people who this happened to 40 years ago or 30 years ago, is just to go to a group where people can sit and talk about how they've healed or how they've not healed. So, just within our communities, if we can set up structures like that or support groups with that, you're going to see a huge difference.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think there's two things I want to highlight from what you've just said. Number one, just back on that reporting piece about going to the police station. I want to just say to a parent who's listening that I think one of the takeaways from what you said for me is that don't give up. The system might frustrate you. You might be
Mm.
pushed from one post to another pillar as you're trying to report what has happened and get support and justice for your child. But don't give up. Don't let
Mm.
being moved around make you then give up, because that child needs to believe and know that there's somebody out there willing to stand up for them.
Yeah.
And you're going through it. It might take 6 months, might take a year, but you going through it with them. You are reinforcing that message in their mind that there's somebody in
Mm.
this world who wants to stand up for me, who wants to empower my voice, and therefore you are
Mm.
doing good. The other thing I wanted to
Yeah,
highlight is
and
that
it's yeah, and we mustn't minimize the fact that the parents are will most probably traumatized as
themselves.
well. And I always say to parents, be careful of what you say. Don't say if somebody hurts you or touches you, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill
Kill them.
him, because your child might not disclose because they're worried you're going to kill that person and you might go to jail. You know, it's something as small as that. So we need to be careful what we speak in front of our children as well,
Yes.
and also be aware of the fact that we're also going to be traumatized. And I think you said it so well. We as parents can't afford for our systems to be charged up because we have to hold the space for our children
Yes.
who doesn't have
Yes.
the capacity to hold space for themselves.
Yes. I volunteered with an organization that did court prep for children who had been
Mm.
victims of abuse. And one of the things we would help parents to also not say is that we'll catch him and he'll be put away. When your
Mm.
child reports abuse to you, you always not to promise them justice in the in
Yeah,
that in that sense of the word of they'll be arrested and thrown away, right? You always to say, I am
absolutely.
here to make sure that your story is heard. We tell the right people, we report this person, and then we continue to support you. That's why you're there.
Absolutely. That is very, very true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I want
Because
to,
in the real world, he's not going to be arrested immediately and be put away.
exactly. And that might affect the
Mm.
trust relationship between you and your child
Yes.
now. But you said he'll be taken away. Don't make those promises. We don't have the authority to make those promises, unfortunately. But just say, I'm here. Let's report it. Let's make sure the right people know about it. And then let's continue getting you help so you can heal and get on with your
Yeah,
life.
and you know what? We have the World Wide Web. We have Google. Parents can't, they can't claim ignorance anymore. It is their responsibility to educate themselves
Yeah.
on everything, on everywhere where their child might be at risk. It's their responsibility.
Yeah. And then, Monique, to bring us to a close, I want to highlight what I heard from you as a call of action to community members, which is we've seen the Alcohol Anonymous model where
Mm,
community centers, churches, community groups step up and provide that service for free, and it's embedded in the community. So all you have to do is just walk to the nearest venue and attend an AA meeting. Let's let's do the same thing for our victims, for our youngest victims of abuse. Let's create
mm,
social structures that are within our communities where the parent can come and talk about being a parent who's supporting a child that's been abused, being a young person who is surviving abuse. Let's create those spaces. Let's be who we need. Let's be the change we want to see as well. And then let's help. And by that, we're helping to also ease the pressure of the system so that the work of Matla can start to show, and that to be felt across the country. But we can't put all the burden on Matlabana, on the SAPS, on anybody. Then
mm.
it will the system will crash. But let's also release that burden by taking on a few things that we can do ourselves in our communities. In our families. We have Stockful communities. In that Stockful, let's become a support group.
Yes.
Let's talk about these things. Let's
Yes.
educate ourselves about these
Mm.
things. So I took that as a
Yes.
call to
And
action.
yeah, and as General Lamour said many years ago, crime comes from within the community. We, as the community, needs to start getting rid of the crime.
Yeah, yeah, we can do something small, but we can do it. All right. Thank you so much to our amazing guest, Monique Strydom, founder of Matlabana, an organization that aims to minimize secondary abuse to children who have suffered crimes against them. Monique's organization started off by focusing on sexual abuse, but they have continued to expand and evolve their offerings to other kinds of abuses that children experience. They work with the SAPS, they work with schools, and of course, you can also reach out to them directly for advice and guidance if you are a victim of abuse or you are the parent or a carer of a child who has experienced abuse. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Safeguarding Africa podcast. We hope that you found it insightful and you found some practical steps that you can take to support the young people in your life and to prevent abuse from befalling them. For myself and the team, we want to say continue being who you needed, and we will see you at the next episode. Take care.
Safeguarding Africa.